Good morning. Welcome to Truth for Today. This is Dai-Qing Yuan, your host and teacher, pastor of Abilene Bible Church. Today we're continuing our study of the first return, which is a part of the larger series called the the post-exilic books. Okay, the first return includes 6 books, 3 prophecy books and 3 history books. Okay, so we put them in the chronological order so we can understand in the historical way and let them make sense. Okay, so today's title is The Edict of Darius and the Finishing of the Temple. The text is Ezra chapter 6. Okay, here is a roadmap for the series called The First Return, and today actually is the last of this series. First, we studied the life of Cyrus, and then the decree of Cyrus. That's Ezra 1. And then the returnees and timing, Ezra 2. The founding of the Second Temple, Ezra 3. The opposition and delay, Ezra 4. Then, since the temple was stopped, but rebuilding the temple was the whole purpose of the first return. Therefore, God is at work through his prophets. About a decade later. So then God's house first. That's one message of Haggai. And then Messiah is on the way. So that's another message of Haggai. Actually, 3 of his messages. Priority, hope, holiness, and Messiah. Priority was for God's house first. And then Messiah's on the way is about hope, holiness, and Messiah. And then another prophet came along, a younger one, called Zechariah. So his messages are, turn to me as I turn to you. And then Zion as the apple of God's eye. Messiah, Yeshua, high priest and king. The 2 anointed beside the Lord. The flying scroll and the evil in Shinar. The horseman and the son of David. The spiritual moral life versus the ritualistic religion. Okay, and then the temple and the presence of the Lord. Those are contents of the first half of Zechariah, chapters 1 through 8. Our whole purpose of teaching the series on the post-exilic books is actually for the sake of Zechariah, putting it into historical background context. Zechariah is a very important eschatological prophetic book. After Daniel, the 5 pillars of Matthew, and Revelation, and these 3 books set up the foundation of eschatology, we are adding it, the Zechariah. However, Zechariah was written in the context of the post-exilic books, and that's why we need to teach the whole series just for this. Okay, now after the first half of Zechariah, that was written about the 518 BC, and then we have the 2 chapters in Ezra of the last 2 chapters of the first half of Ezra, talking about the first return. We have the prophets and the inquiry, Ezra 5, and the new edict and the finishing of the temple, Ezra 6. This is where we are. Okay, the chronology of the first return, the second temple, Haggai, and Zechariah are like this. Cyrus, in his first year, which is 536 BC, he gave an edict letting the Jews to go back to rebuild the temple to pray for the king. And then the Jews took about a year or so to prepare, and then in the first month, 24th day of 534 BC, on that day, the first return happened. And then in the same year, the 7th month, first day, they restored the sacrifice. And the next year, 533 BC, 2nd month, probably the 2nd day too, just like the first temple was founded on the same day, 2nd month, the 2nd day. And it was the founding of the Second Temple. Okay. However, the project was stopped, and then two prophets came along. And first of all, Darius in 520 BC, that Darius' second year, okay, in the second year of Darius, 7th month, 24th day, the Jews already restarted. And in the fall of 520 BC, it's inquiry by Tattenai. That's what we're talking about. And then summer 590 BC is the edict by Darius. That's where we're here. Okay, so what happened in 520 to 518 were two prophets at work, Haggai and Zechariah. The first half of Zechariah were written during this time. And the Jews were whipped up by the prophets to go to God's work and then finished the temple. So in the 6th year of Darius, 516 BC, 12th month, the 3rd day, that's actually in 515 BC. Okay, 516 Nisan year, 12th month, it will be in the 515 BC. Okay, and they finished and dedicated the temple. Okay, that's what we're here today. And then they observed the Passover, and that's 515 BC, 1st month, 14th day. Okay, so we are here at the ending of this period. All right. The history of the returnees is like this. In 536 BC, it was the edict by Cyrus. On the 24th day of the 1st month, 534 BC, it was the first return. Okay, in the 7th month, 1st day, they built an altar and restored sacrifice. The next year's 2nd month, probably the 2nd day, they founded the second temple, and and then in 520 BC, okay, 6th month, the 1st day, that was Haggai's message, the first one saying God's house first. And then in the same month, 24th day of the same year, they restarted rebuilding the work of the temple. You see, it was because Haggai's message, putting God's house first, the Jews restarted rebuilding the temple. And in the fall of 520 BC, there was the inquiry by Tattenai. The 7th month, 21st day, Haggai's message 2, 7th month, same month, Zechariah's message 1. So one is future glory, one is return to God. And in the 9th month, 24th day of 520 BC, Haggai's message 3 to 4. Keep holiness and Messiah is on the way. And then the 9th month, 11th month, 24th day, 520 Nisan year BC, which is in probably 519 in our Julian year BC. That's Zechariah's visions 1 through 8. Okay, and the Messiah and the rejection of him. And then in the summer of 519 BC, it was the edict by Darius, granting them permission to rebuild the temple and or confirming them that they had the right to rebuild the temple. Then in the 9th month, 4th day of 518 BC, that was Zechariah's message 3, the judgment and the blessing. And then in the 12th month, 3rd day, 516 BC, that's the finishing of the second temple. And then in the 1st month, 14th to 15th, 515 BC, that's the Passover and the unleavened bread. So here we are doing the edict by the inquiry by Tattenai, the edict by Darius, and then the finishing of the second temple, and the observing of the Passover. Okay, so these all in today's message. Okay, the inquiry by Tattenai, the Jewish returnees restarted Tattenai. The Jewish returnees restarted the building project on the 6th month, 24th day of 520 BC. And they did this after hearing Haggai's message, message 1, on the 1st day of the 6th month of 520 BC. Okay, so about 3 weeks later, they restarted rebuilding the project. Tattenai was the governor of the province beyond the river, for the Persian Empire. The province beyond the river means all the land west of Euphrates. That includes Syria, that is also called Aram, Lebanon, that is called Phoenicia, and Palestine, that was called Samaria and Judea. Okay. Tattenai has no inherent hostility to the Jews. Thus, he was probably based in Damascus, not Samaria. Okay. He was just doing his official duty of keeping the peace, making sure that the temple project was legitimate, since Jerusalem had a reputation of being a rebellious city, and it was shown indirectly through the letter by Artaxerxes I in Ezra 4. We know that we are in the time of first return, okay, and it's the time of Darius, who is the father of Xerxes, who is the father of Artaxerxes. So a letter by Artaxerxes was presented in Ezra 4 because it was put there to replace a letter that was missing. There was a letter issued by Darius against the Jews rebuilding the wall. And that letter was missing, so a later, similar letter was placed there just to show the reputation that Jerusalem had been a rebellious city, or would have been a rebellious city if it has the wall. Because of this reputation, Tattenai had to make an inquiry. Are the Jews allowed to rebuild the temple? Okay, this is not time for the wall yet. Tattenai wrote to King Darius I in the fall of 520 BC. So here we are in the text, Ezra 6, 1 through 2. Then King Darius issued a decree, and search was made in the archives where the treasures were stored in Babylon. In Ecbatana, in the fortress, which is in the province of Media, a scroll was found, and there was written in it as follows: Memorandum, so on and so on. Okay, so let's explain this. Darius I, who was the king of the Persian Empire, or the great king, from 522 BC to 486 BC. He ruled for almost 40 years. He was busy suppressing the various kinds of rebellions throughout the empire during his first 2 years on the throne. That's 522 to 520 BC. Since he was a distant cousin of Cyrus, he was not Cyrus. He was not a real descendant. Cyrus was, let's explain a little. Cyrus was the first king of the Medo-Persian Empire. No, second king, actually. Cyrus' uncle and father-in-law was the first king of Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, because it was actually the kingdom of Media, which included Persia. But Cyrus was a Persian, or partial, half Persian. His mother was Median, his father was Persian. So he inherited the throne. And from then on, it became the Persian Empire. However, Cyrus, when he died, his son, what's his name? He inherited the kingdom, and he died in Egypt, and he killed all the legitimate heirs for the throne. Cambyses, okay? Cambyses killed his brothers and married a sister like an Egyptian pharaoh. And then when he died, there's no legitimate heir. So Magus, okay, a magician, which actually means the astrologer, astronomer, okay, and he was called Pseudo-Smerdis. He pretended to be Smerdis, the brother of Cambyses, and he succeeded the throne just for 6 months. Then he was found out. He was false. Then Darius, together with several he was part of the Council of Seven, and then they rebelled, and then he was voted by this council to be the king. Okay, so he was a distant cousin of Cyrus, not a direct heir. That's why many doubts came about his legitimacy, and many rebellions rose up. So Darius I was suppressing these rebellions. He was happy to keep peace in Judea, giving the benefit of the doubt. Okay? According to Xenophon's Cyropedia, volume 622, the Persian Empire had 3 capitals, and that is, I think it's Persepolis. That was part of Persia, and then Ecbatana, that was the former capital of Media, and then Babylon, that was the former capital of New Babylonia. Okay. So Cyrus lived in Babylon, that's the former capital of New Babylonia, for 7 months in winter, and in Susa, Susa was the one in Persia, for 3 months in the spring, and in Ecbatana, the former capital of Media, for 2 months in summer. So he took turns to live in these 3 capitals, Susa, Babylonia, and Ecbatana. It's likely that Darius began the search in Babylon, but he found the archive in the summer of 519 BC, when he lived in Ecbatana. Okay, so summer is in the Ecbatana. Okay, so that was a pattern set up by Cyrus, and it's kept by Darius. So it's the summer 519 that he found the historical document. Okay, now verse 3 in Ezra 6. In the first year of King Cyrus, Cyrus the king issued a decree. So this is in the memorandum. Okay, in the first year of King Cyrus, Cyrus the king issued a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the temple, the place where sacrifices are offered, be rebuilt, and let its foundations be retained, its height being 60 cubits and its width 60 cubits. Okay, so it's cubic, okay, probably height and the widths, 2 widths, so 60 times 60 times 60. A cubit is about this length, from the finger to the elbow of an adult man. That's about a foot, and so 3 cubits is about a meter, and 60 cubits would be 20 meters. Okay. Darius' edict confirmed that King Cyrus did authorize the rebuilding of the temple of the God of Jerusalem. The height and the width of the building was to be 60 cubits, matching the original size of Solomon's temple, but the length was left out. Okay, height and width, the length was left out. Okay, in 1 Kings 6:2, 1 Kings 6:2, as for the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, its length was 60 cubits, and its width 20 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. The original was 60 times 20 times 30. Okay, but that's the holy place. The Holy of Holies would be 20 times 20 times 20. Okay, so concerning that the people wept for the smallness of the second temple in Ezra 3:12-13, it's possible that the text was its height being 60 cubits and its width 20 cubits and its length 60 cubits. So height 60 cubits like before, a length of 6 cubits, and the width was 6 cubits, the height was 30. Anyway, height is so high, maybe the length is 60. But anyway, I think it's maybe talking about the Holy of Holies only. It doesn't have the whole size of the holy place. But anyway, the rebuilt one was smaller than the original one. Okay, now in Ezra 6, 4-5, we see with 3 layers of huge stones and 1 layer of timbers, and let the cost be paid from the royal treasury. Also let the gold and silver utensils of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon, be returned and brought to their places in the temple in Jerusalem, and you shall put them in the meat house of God. Okay. The foundation of the temple was to be magnificently firm. The cost should be paid from the royal treasury. Cyrus was grateful for God's blessing of him, as claimed in Isaiah 44, 28-45:1, perhaps shown to him by Daniel. For example, look at Daniel 1:21 and 6:28. Okay, so what happened is this: Isaiah 6:28 through 45:1 mentioned the name of Cyrus twice, and explicitly, and about 150 years before he was born. And it says that God will raise up this anointed Messiah, small m Messiah, of Israel. And he is a foreigner. He doesn't know Jehovah, the Eternal One. But he will be blessed by God. God will basically give the world open doors to him. And then therefore he will let the people of God, Israelites or the Jews at that time, to return to their home country to rebuild the temple of God. So this was said explicitly in Isaiah 44:45, and about 150 years before him. Of course, the liberals among the church today would say, oh, it cannot be written before, it has to be written after. So that's why they separate Isaiah into the first Isaiah and the second Isaiah. Some of them, the first, second, and third Isaiah. But they do that in order to say, well, to satisfy their belief that no one knows the future, and neither does God. Probably God doesn't exist. So they would say every book that has prophecy would have been written after the fact, okay, post the event. But that's just I would say, naturalist faith. Okay, it's not based on historical evidence. Historically, Isaiah was written by the one person prophet who lived in the 7th century. And the last date mentioned in Isaiah was 680 BC. So it was written from about 740 to 680, throughout a span of 60 years in the lifetime of this prophet. And the prophecy of Cyrus was over 1.5 centuries before he was born, and that's the amazing part. God says, that's why I'm the Eternal One. I'm the one, the only one who can predict the end before the beginning. So if you don't believe in this ability to predict the future because God lives above time, then you don't believe in true God. Okay, and what really happened was that probably, okay, that Daniel, who was the prime minister, one of the 3, of the kingdom of New Babylonia during its last king, when he drank with the cup that was taken from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, and God sent a hand to write on the wall. That king said, "I will, if you can explain this, I will make you the 3rd highest person in the kingdom." And that's because he was 2nd highest. He was the co-regent. His father was actually the king. So that night, that king died, and Babylon was taken over by Cyrus, and therefore belonged to the Median Empire at that time. Therefore, it was given to Darius the Mede to rule, and he ruled for 2 years afterwards, and Cyrus ruled for 7 years. And during the time of Darius, he made Daniel one of the 3 prime ministers to rule over the empire. And so Daniel served until the first year of Cyrus, when Daniel was almost probably 80 years old. And he probably was the one to approach the king as one of his chief ministers. He brought the book of Isaiah to Cyrus and said, Your Majesty, look at how our God have blessed you, and your name have been written here twice, and basically your success, amazing success, which we learned in the life of Cyrus, your amazing success is a gift from our God, who's the highest of God in heaven, and then it is His will for you to send our people back to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And Cyrus was very grateful. That's why he said, okay, great, I'll send you to go back, your people to go back, and I will pay for the cost to rebuild your temple. And then please pray for the king. And once you rebuild it, please pray for the king, for me, and for the empire. And it was agreed. So that's why the first return could happen. It was due to the greed, because and the power of the opposition, the greed of the Jews who used the timber to build their own houses, and then the strength of the opposition, that the project was stalled. And after about 2 decades, then this is the time of 70 years, almost 70 years after the fall of the temple in 586 BC. So that's why the temple have to be finished before the end of 516 Nisan year, and it did. it finished in the 12th month of that year, and that's why God sent the 2 prophets to whip them into work. So the vessels from the temple of Jerusalem, confiscated by Nebuchadnezzar and replacement of the non-existent idol of Yahweh, and once used by Belshazzar and caused the writing on the wall, should also be returned. So let's just stop here and thank God for His word. Amen.